Welcome. I'm Mike Friedman, and with me today is Cody Wilson, a candidate for the town council in the upcoming May special election. And we're going to have a conversation about two impactful issues to the town that will be discussed and mostly decided on in the first 6 months of whose ever tenure happens and gets whoever happens to get elected in May. That'll be first. We'll discuss the financial outlook for the town and the upcoming budget. And the second issue is the town green project. I'm hoping that by just focusing on these two issues, that we'll be able to go a little bit more in depth. And that'll give us a sense of how Cody is both prepared to tackle these issues on day one, as well as how he might decide on these issues as they come before him. But before getting started, Cody, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I'm Cody Wilson, and I am 40 years old. Got a wife, two boys. Live over off in Zone 3 off Old Redwood Highway in Thrushwing, and lived in Windsor since about 2014-15, right in there, and grew up in Redding, California, and lived in Sacramento a few years. Went to school down in Northridge, met my wife down there in the valley, and came back up to Sacramento. I got a job that was located over in Sonoma County. That's where they had an opening, and I said, hey, this is a good excuse to move to wine country. So we made the move, and in about 2014, and we've been in Windsor almost ever since, because we lived in Windsor in a rental house over near Walmart, and then kind of right after the fires happened, the owners bequeathed the house to their kids. So we moved to Vineyard Creek for 6 months, and then we found a house, and we were fortunate enough to be able to buy a house in Windsor, which is not easy to do. It's expensive everywhere, and I wonder how a lot of people do it, because we have good jobs and it's still really difficult to do that.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Cody.
Yep.
Let's move into discussing the financial health of Windsor. In January, the town council got some sobering news from its financial consultants that was indicating sort of a long-term systemic revenue gap on a yearly basis. Now, since that time, we've gotten a bunch of good news, both with the federal stimulus bill earmarking certain monies to municipalities, as well as they hadn't originally accounted for things like the potential gain of hotel taxes from the McClelland Hotel and some improved sales outlook. I crunched the numbers. Originally, they were projecting a $1.8 million a year revenue gap, but I've crunched the numbers with the latest improved situation. And unfortunately, it still looks like we have about a $650,000 a year revenue gap. Much better than before, much easier, hopefully, to address. But my question is, how should we fill this gap?
Let's increase the sales tax revenue. That does a couple things. That's one thing we could do is, if we increase sales tax revenue to the business that are already here, businesses that are here, that could close some of the gap. If we develop habits to shop locally, I think that would help us.
Okay, but I've crunched the numbers on that as well.
Yeah.
And we seem to have about $500 million in gross receipts a year, which yields our, 4 point X million dollars of sales tax revenue. If in order to make up the 650K, that would mean we would have to increase our gross sales tax revenues by $65 million a year. That's the math that I've worked out, which turns out to be about $6,500 a household or $2,100 a person. And so I'm wondering, do you really see that as a realistic strategy to really get the 650,000? Or do you just look at it as just a component or maybe a minor component of the overall package that needs to be considered?
Probably a component. I mean, doesn't seem realistic that that would solve it all. But I think it would help put us in the right direction, because I think if we develop habits that support our own town, that can snowball, and that could lead to exponential growth, possibly. Who knows? But I would say a component. I wouldn't expect it to, even if we did better in town, I wouldn't expect it to fill that gap. I mean, maybe, can we cut costs in other places? Maybe. Are we wasting things? I don't know. It's hard to. I would think there's got to be there's probably spots that we spend money on that maybe we don't need to. Maybe we should do more fundraising.
Well, and have you considered the alternative sales tax mechanism, which is currently Windsor doesn't add anything to the base 8.25% sales tax, and hence only receives the 1% that municipalities receive out of that 8.25%. If we added an 1/8 cent to our sales tax, if I'm right on that $500 million of gross receipts, that would generate $650,000 a year just on existing, what people spend and what businesses spend in town. Why shouldn't we do something like that?
Well, a lot of people don't want extra taxes. That kind of rubs them the wrong way. Maybe we should let people decide in Windsor who wants to pay that tax. And I bet a lot of people would, if we give us the choice. What if we give our citizens the choice to pay that extra tax? And if you don't want to, you don't have to. That's thinking outside the box.
That is, I'm not. Can you explain how you can make that work practically?
Not with details, but that's the general idea. I mean,
That,
I think if
so,
we give people choices, then they won't feel kind of like a punch in the gut. It's like, oh, I have to pay another tax. Thanks a lot. Like that makes the locker room sour. It makes it so you feel like you're forced to pay more, and a lot of people don't like that. But if you give them the choice to, I bet a lot of people would pay that tax. And
yeah,
fill those gaps.
but I believe that in order to institute such a tax, it would have to actually go to a vote in town. I don't think that the town council could merely institute an 1/8 cent. But in either case,
Right.
is what it doesn't seem like you're advocating, why don't we ask the town residents and do a democratic vote on it? You're suggesting that instead, that when somebody makes a purchase at a business in town, that they would volunteer to pay a little bit extra?
Yeah, give them the choice right at the register.
Okay.
Do you want to pay this? Do you want to pay the standard tax we already pay? Or do you want to help the town and give a little more? All of a sudden, you're looking at it differently. And you see those things, oh, do you want to round up your change to go to this cause? You've seen that in the store. Why not do that? all of a sudden, that's like an intrinsic, all of a sudden, you're helping the town and you're not forced to pay something. It's like a totally different feeling. So you're doing two things. You're closing that gap, and you're giving a good value, intrinsic value to the town, because people are deciding to help. They're choosing, they get to choose. That's one idea.
Yeah, no, that's an idea. We also have other sources of revenue in town besides sales tax.
We do?
Uh,
Just kidding.
and so do you see how we can increase, those others? Basically, we seem to have three primary sources, and you
Right.
talked about one. Do you have ideas on whether or how we should increase revenue from the other two sources?
Well, the property taxes, I mean, if we're gonna talk about the Civic Center project, and that's said to increase property tax revenue, but it doesn't seem to be the CPI doesn't seem to be indicating that that's going to increase. So I don't know about property taxes. That might just stay the same. Who knows?
Yeah, I think you're right on the property tax, that historically, there's sort of a very narrow range for revenue
Yeah.
growth. It's around 3% a year on property tax. And even adding new property tax to the payrolls, at least in California, has also historically not been a revenue gain because of the added services that the town has had to provide to support those properties. So
And
I think,
isn't it even at like 1% now? So it's not really
well, the 3% is the growth rate of the revenue coming into the town. Uh,
projected.
yeah, that's our historical average over the last 20 years.
So at
Uh,
least it's consistent.
yeah. And so, when the financial consultants did their projections, they continued with that consistent. So it wasn't something that was seen to be a drag, other than the town is projected to be spending at a higher rate than 3%. And hence part of why the revenue gap exists, because sales tax and even TOT are running at growth rates that are less than the projected spend rate.
So there's one, the TOT, right?
Well, that's the third one. So ideas on increasing the TOT.
Well, I don't know if it's raised the TOT percentage. That's already, what, 12%? It's already quite a bit, it seems.
Yes.
So let's say we don't do that. Well,
It also doesn't generate a lot of money. Every 1% gain is only about 200K. So you'd have to, if you were going to cover 650K, you would need, about a 3 to 4% gain, which seems very steep.
so we need more people staying at our hotels, it would seem. So how do we attract more people? Some people don't want to attract people, but that's a big revenue source in the town. I think making our town, focusing on the values, and maybe looking at ways we can make the town, feature the town on websites. Just kind of making it so people want to come here. How do you do that? That's a good question.
Are you suggesting that you think that the occupancy rates at the Windsor hotels are, are lower than the occupancy rates in Santa Rosa and Healdsburg? Or that we want to actually, excel in our occupancy rates above the norm?
Well, I think we could improve. Let's improve that. I don't know that it's that they're way lower than Santa Rosa's or surrounding areas. But I think there are ways that we could make Windsor more attractive. Like, you get off the highway 101, off Old Redwood Highway. I don't know what's attractive there. I mean, it's okay. Why don't we make that more attractive? Why don't we put different pictures on the website? I don't want to see cement with a pond. That's not attractive. I don't want to see a fountain that needs to be power washed. That's not attractive. It's a cool fountain. Just power wash it, clean it off. I mean, it's the small details, and then people come here. Why don't we paint something on the overpass when you get off Old Redwood Highway and you go onto the overpass towards the town green? I mean, why don't we have murals going on? I mean, we want people to remember this place so they come back and they're jealous that they don't live here. That's what we want. And they can't, and so, we want people to remember, oh, I want to go back there. That place was really cool. I mean, and this is going to help. I mean, our revenue, a lot of it is TOTs, right? So we want people to come stay here.
Okay, so we're going to need to move on to the second topic, the town green, in a few moments. So I want to give you a chance to sort of summarize, what you've been talking about over the last 15 minutes in terms of your solution to the 650K revenue gap.
Another thing would be, let's have more variety of events at the town green. Let's make people want to go there. And that's going to generate more foot traffic and sales tax revenue. Let's bring people out from in the same county, Sonoma County. Let's make people want to come to Windsor. Maybe more play structures somewhere. Families, we want families to come here. Close the gap. We got to think outside the box. Try different things. Make us. Let's take risks, but take them responsibly. But I think just making it Windsor more attractive, trying to unite the county, I think, like make Windsor the heart of Sonoma County. Make it great. Make it like people come from across the world and like, wow, what is this place? Let's come back here. So, sales tax, TOT, and all that stuff is going to increase value in our real estate.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the town green project.
Yes.
That's a complicated project, in that it includes a luxury hotel, relocating and building new civic buildings, and a bunch of residential units where it's projected that, almost half of them will sort of be, Airbnb, I don't want to use the word timeshare because it's not a timeshare, but, in that kind of a vein, vacation rentals.
Yeah, right.
We're going to see a major revised plan and financial forecast in April.
Yeah,
so rather than focusing on anticipating what those details might be, I'm going to spend the 15 minutes sort of asking you to look at and commenting on the goals of the project, the risks that are in the project, and the consequences that you sort of see of the project.
Sure.
But again, at the outset, I wonder if you can just sort of give us a very quick sense of how you're viewing the project right now. Are you,
I support the project.
Okay, excellent. That was very
Direct.
short. That's what I was looking for. So the project to me has three goals. It's to complete the vision that the town originally had of encircling the town green with commercial and residential properties. It's to generate enough revenue from the project so that we can relocate and build new civic buildings. And finally is to generate, potentially a marginal amount of new revenue for the town by largely enhancing the business opportunities in and near the downtown area. And so I wonder, why or why not are these the important goals for this project? And for actually, why or why not are these the important goals for Windsor to achieve?
Well, let's talk about revenue. Okay, so say the Civic Center's built and the hotel's built. So in 4 years, we'll start yielding those revenues when it gets, what's the word for that? Stabilization, right? So that's where we start to see revenues. We know the business owners could benefit from this. I mean, we've heard from them. They want this. They all want this. I can see why. I think a lot of residents would want it because it increases, as far as if you're looking at the hotel, you got those other retail things within the hotel. People want to have those choices. People want to have more choices. So that is attractive to people. They will seek out those things rather than just having one or two places. Okay, where are we going? Ken? Okay, let's go to Ken. Let's have more choices. And there's other restaurants there I know already, but that's attractive to people. And it's not to everybody, but it is to a lot of people. Dave Krepke, something Dave Krepke said stuck with me. He said, first of all, that's an old school site. Okay. But he said, on weekend nights, there's nobody there. There's nothing there. So this is kind of an evolution thing. It's kind of evolving. It's a change. A lot of people don't want it. A lot of people do want it. I think I don't know if it's a necessary change, but I think it can be a good change. It could, we heard from a ton of technicians. Hey, I want to work here. I want to do projects here. So I don't have to go to the city. So it adds jobs, right? The relocation, I like the relocation to the school, Windsor Creek Elementary, because if we can refurbish that place, why not keep it? Why not use it for something after they move the police station out of there and all the other offices? Can we use that? I know it's the school districts, but maybe we can work something out there. Let's get creative. I mean, if we're going to upgrade it, I think that could benefit the town.
Well, they're talking about that just being a temporary as they're waiting for the new
why?
buildings to be
Why
built.
temporary? I mean, if we're gonna,
Well, that's sort of the second goal, right? That's the question of the second question. And it sounds like you're challenging that one a little bit, which is right now, the current plan has looked at building new civic buildings on the Telfer property, and needing to use revenue generated by the hotel in order to fund the payback of the loans that they'll take out to build those things. And that's expensive, and there seems to be there's a lot of complication involved in that. So
51 million. 51 to 55 million.
Yeah. And so it sounds like you're advocating potentially looking at reducing the risk that by trying to reuse other properties within Windsor that we might be able to do at a much lower cost. Is that what you're suggesting?
No, I support the Plan C. I support that the new building at the north side, with everything in there except the police station across the street right there. Now, I don't like everything about that project. I don't know why they're saying, the rubber green company said, had another makeup of it, and it like reduced the library size by 3 to 5,000 square feet. I don't get that. But yeah, okay, so the whole thing is, it's a risk, but in theory, we can repay it from the revenues, from the 4%, hotel plus the B&B, or, the rental houses, 4% from all that, well, 55%, 4% of the 55%. And then the 2% of the other hotel revenues, right? So, okay, so in theory, we can pay it back, but
So if you're elected, you'll have to dive through all of the agreement paperwork and, the legal paperwork, and analyze it to sort of see if it's going to deliver on what you're hoping it's going to deliver on. What experience do you have in doing that kind of, of analyzing these kinds of projects, this public-private kind of project, and doing that kind of analysis?
I've paid off my credit card. I don't have any professional experience in that area, but I can.
Fair enough. I wouldn't expect almost any town council candidate to have it. I just wanted to ask it. Because we're going to need who's ever elected to, to do that along with the other council members.
What's cool about that is it's interesting, and I would want to be upfront and transparent about it. Like, let's go over this as a whole, and let's talk about pluses and minuses about this. Like, out there, let's put it out there. So
why don't we move on for a moment to the risks?
Yeah.
What do you think is the risk that the hotel construction would be delayed, and hence delay revenues for the town? And how would you mitigate this?
Well, it's already a risk because we have to wait pretty much what they're saying 4 years before we really stabilize into getting some revenue, getting any significant revenue. And so it's kind of like a upward slope there, given everything goes well. So already we're okay. We hope it works here. I mean, it's untested. So Windsor's never had anything like this. So,
but wouldn't you be committing the town to paying back $50 to $60 million in loans? So, are you thinking that whenever you do a project like this, there's risk involved? The critical thing is understanding the risk. It's sort of like, any investment, an investment risk. And you want to understand the level of risk and balance that with the gains that you're going to get, and make a decision that you've managed the risk well enough that the gains are going to be is going to be what you want. So that's really what I'm getting at with this question. And then the follow-ons are some other areas where risk might be introduced in the project, is how you go about thinking about managing those risks.
Well, we would want to use all the tools possible to kind of insulate the town from having to, and that's one of the goals that they talk about is not having to touch the general fund. So, however,
but what tools are available?
Well, that's a good question, because timing, right? When funds are needed, how do we get those funds versus stabilization of the revenue? So we need upfront stuff. So that's a question I have. Like, what's the coverage factor? Because the lender and the investors are going to have that for leverage. Like, we need this funding up front, In the meantime, we have to wait 4 years before we really get revenue. So those are questions that I have too.
Fair enough.
It's an untested product.
And I think I can imagine why you could see that would be people in the community who would be concerned by that, because of the commitment that's being laid out there, that a project that maybe didn't have as tight a relationship between the revenue and the building of the civic buildings, might be more understandable. But I hear you. And actually, the final risk question is, how do you protect the town from the project or the operator from using bankruptcy to get out of or to force us to alter the agreement?
Well, I don't know exactly. I don't know. That's stuff we'd really have to decide on going into the project before we sign any papers, right? What are the tools we could use? We'd have to go over that with the residents and make that really transparent so we know what we're going into. Because there's no way around the risk. There's going to be a risk. However, the payout could be good. I think it's kind of a natural step maybe for personally, I wish we could have a town green that's like Central Park, just a park, huge park. That's personally, but it's probably not realistic. And so I'm getting on board with this project. And that's stuff we would really want to go over and be so transparent with the residents, like before anything is done, so they don't feel like it's getting shoved down their throat and there's distrust and people are hiding things. So that's what I'm all about. Open book. Let's talk.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's going to be an important aspect of the outreach from the town staff and the town council itself is to basically give the residents an understanding that you're on top of the risk and you're working and how you're working really hard to manage that risk.
Let's lay it out with the T graph. Bad, good.
So moving on to consequences. What do you see as the top 3 positives of doing this project, and what do you see as sort of the top 3 negatives? And when I say positives and negatives, I mean potential positives and potential negatives.
Sure. Positives, I think. Obviously, I think a revenue opportunity. It's supposedly it's a rare thing to be working with private developer and a municipality and working on it so we don't have to touch general fund general funds. So I think that's a positive. It's kind of a rare thing, and it's maybe an opportunity we have. Obviously, let's say it goes well and we're generating more revenue. We're increasing the desirability of the town. I think we're kind of growing while not expanding on the outer limits. So and people get excited about that. People like that. Some people don't.
And how about the potential negatives?
And the negatives, I don't like how we have to sell the Telfer properties. Some of that's going to go to private businesses. All right. So, that's not going to be Windsor's. It's going to be, it's not a lot. It's not a lot of the Telfer, but it's some. So that's a sacrifice we make. The feeling that we're taking away some of our family kind of attraction community, but I think we can make up for that by what we do. On the surface, it seems okay. Yeah, this is, we're privatizing. Yeah, to an extent, but let's do things that promote our family values for our family community. What other negatives? I think just the
Well,
risk.
I think that's good enough.
Yeah.
And then the risk, I think, is a good one to follow up with. Last question on the Town Green project. If you had to put the positives on one side of a scale and the negatives on the other side of the scale, which one wins at this point for you? I think I know the answer, but I want to hear it.
I'm gonna say 60-40. It's positive for the Civic Center project.
Okay.
I
well,
do wonder about parking. It sounds like they're adding it, like it could be confusing, all that, but
yeah.
um,
Well, thanks for talking to me about the Town Green project. I think we have to wrap it up here. Can I ask you one final question?
you may.
That this is a short tenure position.
Yep.
It's only a year and a half. And I'm kind of interested in your motivation. Why? Yeah, I don't recall you having run before. And so why did you get into this particular election for, at this particular time?
It was my time. It's my time to come forward and offer my services and offer an out-of-the-box approach to a lot of things, and very transparent. And I just felt it was my time. It was almost my time on the normal election. Now I'm in District 3, so I won't be able to run unless I run for mayor. But I just felt this came around, and the circumstances where I didn't run before, and then this special election comes around, I said, there's something about it. I'm gonna do it. And I feel like I can contribute quite a bit. One thing's for sure, I'm coming from the right place, and it's exciting. It's something new, like you said. I like challenges. It's something new. I'm a little out of my comfort zone, and it's great.
Well,
That's where we go.
Thank you very much, Cody, for talking with me today. That is very informative. I think we got to cover a number of those topics quite thoroughly. And
yeah, thanks, Michael.
I found it very useful, and hopefully others will as well.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.